You know what? I've been drinking Kanu coffee recently. Not bad. Not bad at all. The smallest cafe in the world. That's pretty cool, Kanye Reeves. Kanu coffee. I'll admit it, that's a pretty cool thing. Anyways, today I was going to talk about how I was raised a communist. No, how I was born basically a communist, but I was raised as a capitalist. Which I have to say have been such a blessing and a curse at the same time. First, I have to explain the fact that communism in Russia fell in 1990, but I was born in 1993. So you may be wondering, well then, how does that make you communist? Well, you have to think about it this way. The country just fell apart, and the government just changed. The people's minds don't change that fast, right? So the communist mentality stayed prominent, especially in the elder generation. A good example, since 90% of my watchers are Korean, is the Park government. That's why you see a lot of demonstrations and a lot of protests from the older generation of Korea, how they still support the Park government. I don't want to get political, but I just wanted to give you an example. In my last video, I told you how in Russia growing up, people didn't really complain much. That's a really important point because even though the country fell apart, the economy was apart, people didn't have jobs, people didn't have resources, and especially in a really small town that I lived in, it was like the very last priority for the government to take care of. So our little town was kind of maybe 20, 30 years behind everybody else. The point that I was gonna make, don't complain, is because the Russian people knew things were bad, but they chose not to complain about it and just bear it. So the cool thing about that is because I learned how to cook, I learned how to clean, I learned how to do laundry, I learned how to sew my own clothes, I learned how to fix things, right? Because whenever you break something, you have to fix it yourself because there's no buying a new thing. You get one thing, whatever it is, and then you have to either take care of it really well, and if you break it, then you have to know how to fix it. I actually kind of like that because those small little skills and that small mentality definitely carried into my adulthood, into my life now, and I really appreciate it. Since I lived in a really, really tiny small town that was stuck in the past, there was not really any opportunities for people. They accepted the situation for where it is, and people really couldn't escape. And I think that's why my mom decided to leave for America, because she knew there was no opportunities for me and for my future. And that's why I'm still extremely thankful to my mom that she took me out of that small little town. Yeah, Mom, thanks if you're watching this. I know you're watching this, Mom. I think a lot of older generations of Russians still blame the West and the Western influence, and especially America, for the downfall of communism. I'm not sure, I don't want to get political about this, but there was definitely this hatred towards Americans from Russians. I remember always hearing conversations from adults how bad America is and how good Russia is. That's the same thing all the kids as parents would talk about, and so us kids naturally would make fun of Americans frequently, which is, oh, Americans are fat, stupid, lazy, capitalist pigs. So I kind of had this hatred mentality towards America because I was just in that environment to where I thought that it was normal. I was taught to hate, and everybody else was taught to hate. So that made it really tricky whenever I actually moved to America because I hated them. I remember at first I used to always make fun of Americans, and I always talked about how good Russia was and how shitty America was. I had a really good mom, and she taught me, not to hate. And my mentality slowly started to change and become more, let's say, capitalist American mentality. Definitely a really big, huge shock factor for me that I remember once I moved to the US was the fact that people had a tendency just to throw everything away, like brand new things or barely used things. If something was broken, it was just immediately thrown away. And for me, that was a shock because I grew up learning that you shouldn't throw anything away, and then if you break it, you fix it. But Americans just buy new all the time. Buy. Capitalism, right? My, you can say, capitalist mentality didn't really kick in until I learned the language and I started to understand the country itself. And this was in my early adulthood. And it became extremely problematic because the two mentalities are really different from one another. So for example, part of me hates big corporations and big business, and I might say something like, It ruins small businesses. Like, fuck big corporations. But then the other side of me is like, I want that big corporation money. So it's like communism, capitalism, right? So I always have these two battles going on. Or for example, let's say YouTube. Sometimes I talk shit about some YouTubers with my other YouTuber friends. I would say something like, oh, why is this YouTuber so popular? I don't understand. Because part of me is part of this YouTube competition too. And I want to grow and I want to be on the top, right? And I want to make the big money on YouTube. It's my capitalist side. But my communist side says, no, the YouTube is a platform for everyone. It makes it really problematic whenever I'm trying to understand a certain situation, because I'm seeing things from two different perspectives. But at the same time, if I stop complaining, I think it's actually kind of cool, and maybe I'm actually really lucky because I was born in a communist society and I was raised by capitalists. It gave me two different sets of eyes that I could analyze every single situation in, or any single debate that I'm in, or any single argument that I'm in. I'm able to truly understand two parties whenever I'm talking with somebody. I think that's the best thing that I got, me growing up the way I did. And not many people have the opportunity to do so. And I would not be the type of person that I am today if I didn't grow up the way that I did. Anyways, I mean, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.